This place is massive. Surely there is a pack of cigarettes in here somewhere.
Ah! David!
This is gonna be the best cigarette of your life.
Dad!
I'm not playing detective, I just want to survive.
Playing detective is how we survive. We play his games, we'll lose.
Always focusing on the detail, Mark. What about taking a huge risk and just do something?
Oh my God.
This place does give me the willies.
You watch too many horror movies.
You okay?
Not even close.
He wants to choose, doesn't he? Oh my God. If we don't do something, both of them will die.
We have to choose. Now!
Ah!
You have to get the fuck out any way you can.
Hey everyone, it's Soul here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For today's video, we are wrapping up my review of the Dark Pictures Anthology series. Now, if you haven't seen them previously, I have made videos discussing all 3 of the previous games in Dark Pictures Season 1, and today we are going to discuss the season finale, The Devil in Me. I hope you all are ready for a long video because I will be discussing my overall thoughts and opinions on Season 1 as a whole at the end of this video. Before we dive in though, please remember to hit that like button, click subscribe to see more videos from me, and leave a comment down below. Here is your one and only warning that this video contains spoilers. Alright, grab your inhalers and let's get into it. For those of you that may not know, the Dark Pictures Anthology is a collection of standalone horror games created by Supermassive Games. It is considered by many fans as an unofficial sequel to the successful horror game Until Dawn. Now, all 4 of these games keep the idea of the butterfly effect strong in the first season of Dark Pictures. The butterfly effect leads to many unique experiences and outcomes for players, which also helps heighten the excitement of replaying games, watching playthroughs online, and playing the game with friends. Now, as I stated in my previous videos discussing these games, I am, and probably always will be, a big fan of watching video game playthroughs online. So I was very excited to see the finale of this first season. With this being the most recent game, the animations and motion capture are off the charts. Every time one of these games is released and you have the close-ups on the characters' faces, it looks more and more realistic with each game. Now, the concept of a murder house full of traps and hidden corridors was a very exciting concept to see on screen, and this game is definitely full of pros and cons. But before I get into all of my thoughts and opinions, I first want to walk you through the events of my playthrough that I did for this video. We start off with Jeff and Marie, who share one last loving look as they both die at the hands of H.H. Holmes. After some hikes in the woods and the arrival of the group on the island, a hunt for some cigarettes, and choosing to bloom the romance between Aaron and Jamie, I tried to pick the less annoyed and less rude options when playing as both Mark and then Charlie, which resulted in the more calm, civil, and encouraging dinner speech. When Erin is then trapped and separated, I chose the inhaler to keep her alive because I knew that she'd die if I didn't. Thanks for the guidance on that one, Jack. I then had Kate keep her crystal, and I also tried to mend her and Mark's relationship in their convo together. After Charlie gets sent to the basement and Jamie is left alone in the freezer, I was able to get the out-of-breath Erin safely into hiding. I then had Charlie hide under the grate, which tricked everyone into thinking that he burned, but don't worry, because he comes back later. After wandering around through the spa, I chose to save Erin when she and Kate were trapped, but luckily Kate's window had a leak in it and she survived. The group soon get ridiculously separated, and I'm able to keep Mark hidden as he makes his way out of Dumet's workshop. Charlie is then seen alive, and I keep him hidden from Dumet as well. Then it is time for the girls' big play. I was able to keep them all alive as they attempted their plan, and then I decided to have Jamie keep the screwdriver and to send the wall her way, simply because I knew that if Kate gets the wall, the only way to save her is if she has the screwdriver. But part of me wanted to know if Jamie would even need the screwdriver or if it was a moment where she would be rewarded for sacrificing herself. It turns out that's not true because the screwdriver is what saved her. I then got to play as Kate on the roof, which was really cool to see since many of the playthroughs that I saw beforehand had Kate already dead, so it was really fun to try and hide and use her crystal to help calm her down. But then, sadly, tragedy struck because I kind of got Jamie killed by having her attack Dumet. I thought it was one of those moments where if she did nothing, Kate would be the one to die, but it turns out I was very wrong about that. But anyways, then eventually Kate and Aaron fall down the hillside, Mark and Charlie meet up and hide together, and I did not have Kate kill the dog because that would have just been horrible. And all is well as the four of them make it to the lighthouse and eventually run down to the boathouse. After the cop arrives, I have Mark grab the pepper spray and they got on the boat to freedom, but then, as you know, it was time for the grand finale. At this point, I was feeling a bit confident. I kind of know that it's better if people jump off the boat except for whoever the last two are, but I kind of messed up. I got Mark killed by messing up the buttons, and I was really annoyed about it, but then I did get a different ending in which Dumet is on the boat as it crashes and explodes into the rocks, versus what a lot of other people got, in which he is impaled by the anchor and is then dragged into the boat's propeller. So yeah, I mean, 2 dead, 3 lived, but I did get to see some sections that I hadn't seen before, which is always fun. Now, I stated in my last video that Little Hope is the second best game in Season 1, and I have to admit that it was very hard for me to decide between Little Hope and The Devil in Me for that second place title. The two games are both very enjoyable to play and very unique in their own different ways. While The Devil in Me has so many promising new features that make it stand apart from the rest of the Season 1 games, ultimately for me, the decision came down to the complete stories. Simply put, The Devil in Me, despite all the praise that I'm going to give it, does not have enough going on in the story for me to truly care about the characters and to have a second motive that keeps me playing aside from just keeping the characters alive. When playing through the game, sure, you uncover a few details about the characters, but mainly you find a lot of things concerning the enemy, Mr. Dumet, also known as Agent Monday, and the clues. But the clues that we find, they aren't anything that make us question the reality of the here and now of the characters. We know the entire time that it is some psycho who is just trying to kill us, and that's about it. So there isn't a second thing that's sort of strong enough to pull us into the plot. Yet despite the severe lack of this double investment, The Devil in Me has by far the best environment and setting out of all 4 games. The constantly moving walls of the murder house, seeing everything from the hotel to the control room, as well as the expansion into the forest, it made for this ever-evolving feel in the game, where some sections are downright terrifying, and others might be brightly lit, but have this eerie feeling from the sheer scale of the controls and the depth of creation that Dumet has put into this house. I also think the added puzzles and movements definitely helped with the environment, but I'll be honest, it is hard to separate those additions from the environment. The added climbing and jumping, it certainly changed the feel of this environment since you get to view it from quite literally a different angle, which created a very different feeling from the previous 3 games in the season. But I think this was a really smart move. The lack of control and the lack of freedom to simply move around in the previous games is an interesting thing in story-driven horror games. I think back to something like Until Dawn or House of Ashes. The stories were so full that I didn't think the freedom to move around was necessary or felt missing. But in something like The Devil in Me, where the story wasn't as full or as intriguing as it could have been, it was definitely a really good addition to the game. Moving forward, I am also really curious to see how a story that is full and immensely intriguing would be experienced with the added freedom and abilities to move around more. The same thing goes for the special abilities and different inventories that each character had. In The Devil in Me, it helped immensely with building the tension, progressing the game, and finding clues that helped explain the story of Monday. I think the best section of these abilities, it has to be Erin walking through the hallway, trying to locate the source of the sound with her microphone. The audio in that section is so well done and immediately puts my nerves on edge, despite having seen it and played through it a couple of times. Erin's character in general stressed me out over the concern for her inhaler. That was such a simple yet effective addition to her character. Jamie's abilities obviously help progress the game with the puzzles of the switchboards, which is a fun addition to slow down and have a brief moment of concentration. Then Kate, Charlie, and Mark, they all have different things that help reveal clues. I felt the balance of these moments in the game that had the abilities and tasks was very well done. It wasn't too much to the point where it felt completely different from the rest of the games in Season 1. I am very curious to see if they will keep this balance of the tasks being more reserved or if they might attempt to add more and more moving forward. There was, however, the slight concern that I had when playing through this game, and that was the fact that maybe they were trying too many new things at once. On top of all the great climbing and puzzles, there was also the addition of Mark being able to take pictures on his camera. It was briefly thrown out that he should document everything so that if they survive, they have proof, but after it being mentioned once, there isn't really anything that comes of it. I feel that was a really big missed opportunity to have a few different options in the ending. If it was a consistent idea that Mark needs to document every little thing and you need to take as much pictures as possible, it could have been really cool to have an ending where perhaps the cops don't believe them if you didn't get enough pictures. Or vice versa, the exact opposite would happen, where Mark saves the day because he has plenty of proof, and because he has that evidence, the next group of victims are never contacted as the police are searching for Dumet. There was a lot of room for possibilities for that idea to be explored further, but it seems it wasn't thought through or really developed enough. There is one thing that I am really struggling with in terms of the plot, and it's partially why I feel this game is not as full in the story as it could be, and that is the question of Monday or Mr. Dumet. I do not understand how he can get and be everywhere all at once. Now, before you simply say he had shortcuts in his house and cameras everywhere, yes, I know that, but that still doesn't seem to cover all the bases. This game does a really good job with the far-off shots of our main characters that appear to be through the camera or through the screens of Dumet. They are fairly obvious moments. Whether it's an audio clue or the screen appearing as if on a TV or film, there is usually something obvious about it. The same thing seems to go for when Dumet is watching them through, say, a secret door. An audio shift, a color change, or something would appear. And then, of course, there might be a cheap jump scare of Dumet where he is seen moving. But there are a few shots and angles that don't appear to be cameras or some sort of hidden viewpoint, and I guess I'm just wondering why have those angles in at all? They seem to almost imply that something or someone else is watching them, and yet it is almost impossible to be Dumet. So coming from this company who is usually fairly good at creating payoff for a lot of these mysterious angles, for it to not be paid off in the end is just a little bit strange. Going off of that, there are a few times I am wondering how Dumet would be able to make it to a certain place so quickly. The main example of this being how he goes from spying on Jamie and Aaron to swiftly killing Morello and his daughter who escaped on the ferry. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you only end up with Mark and Kate alive at the end of the game, Dumet's cycle is shown. He threatens to poison one of the two people as leverage so that, in this case, Mark does everything Dumet tells him to, with the promise of letting Kate and him go if he plays the role of Dumet, the ferryman. Once Mark shuttles in a new group of victims, they go to escape by the ferry and Dumet ends up shooting them. So I guess I don't really understand how he had made it from the hotel inside the secret corridor and passage to go and shoot Morello so quickly. For a while I assumed that there were two people playing the role of Dumet, and while I guess that might still be the case based on the open-ended ending, I am just not sure who that person would be since there are really no clues pointing to a second person, so that doesn't seem to be the likely explanation. I also just don't like the fact that there is such an open-ended question on if there are more than one enemy. Naturally, many people ended up questioning if there is really just one person playing the role of Dumet since he appears to be everywhere at once. He's watching the trio in the spa while also simultaneously waiting for Erin to emerge from her hiding place. Mark and Charlie seem to discuss the possibility of it, in which Charlie shoots Mark's idea down, saying that it is only one person, and to me that section of dialogue kind of seemed a bit out of place, as if the writers are still deciding in the middle of writing if it's one or two people. And in many ways, the ending almost seems to confirm the idea of Dumet really being two people, since we see him basically get killed at the end of the game by the boat. But all of the clues suggest that he is only Monday. and that he's entirely on his own. This confusion and the almost contradicting ideas is really frustrating for me since the story is essentially left incomplete. And frankly, in my opinion, no amount of good environment and fun gameplay can cover up a poorly finished story. While the ending of Little Hope is certainly unpopular, at least it was complete and final, unlike this where it's left open. I also just don't love the fact that this kinda leads to the possibility of a sequel, in the fact that we might see Dumet in a future game, because I don't feel like he is that interesting of an enemy to face again. But that is just a personal opinion. Another area of the story that is lacking is the characters themselves. As far as character growth, there isn't much change throughout the game. Sure, Charlie can go from being rude and being focused solely on work to having a bit more of a heart. And you also have the simmering romance of Aaron and Jamie, as well as the rekindling romance, if you choose to do so, between Mark and Kate. But there isn't much else there. This is where that double investment could have come into play. One small detail that I keep coming back to is the detail of Kate's friend in college being killed by a serial killer. When I first saw the game, I thought we might see all of the characters' background on why they make the documentaries that they do. It might have helped pull us into the characters more if Dumet had evidence and information on why they each wanted to work on a serial killer documentary. Not only would it help us connect to the characters, but it was also really chilling and creepy to see and hear Kate's reaction when she realized that Dumet somehow knew about her past. I feel like that was a big missed opportunity in developing our main characters further. While the in-depth plot is something that lacks, I have to give a round of applause for all of the different locations, scenarios, and traps that the writers came up with for this game. Not only do the walls move around in the hallway, but there's also trap doors that snatch them away quickly, or slowly moving ramps, gates slamming shut, creepy back rooms, creepy stage rooms. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, with every place and every trap being unique. I think that the creepiest part of the game is when they are in the spa and we see all of the recreations of how the past victims had died. The idea that Mr. Dumet is toying with them is messed up to think about. The jump scares in that section I feel were also perfectly timed, and it made for a tense and blood-pumpingly dark section of the game. So to sum up my thoughts on The Devil in Me as a whole, I love the new feel of the game that we get with the addition of character inventories, abilities, and the freedom to climb and jump in certain sections that are a lot more open than the previous games. The murder house was insanely impressive to watch on screen with the multitude of locations, scares, and environments, but the full story was not enough to make me fully care about these characters, and that combined with the ending feeling a bit incomplete and rather indecisive on the fact of if there are more than one people posing as Dumet, it makes this game a bit lackluster in the ending, and is therefore my third place pick in my ranking of the Dark Pictures Anthology. Now, I want to briefly discuss this season as a whole. The overall feeling that I got from almost all of the games in Season 1 is the general feeling of it being rushed, unfinished, or at the very least, unpolished. All of the games had really intriguing concepts that ultimately weren't thought through enough or weren't executed as well as they could have been. Now, it could be argued that it is because these games are a bit shorter and are pushed out very quickly. And while that may be true, we just will never truly know the reasons as to why the companies don't spend more time before the release. But I will say this. I think most people are on board with the idea of quality over quantity and would much rather wait a few extra months or even another year for something of a higher standard than to just have more games of a lower quality. I will also admit that I am a little bit worried about the annual releases of this game as well as the addition of the release of The Quarry during the releases of these 4 games. It might make these games just a smidge too boring in their most basic concept, in that you always have 5 people you have to try and save, and shocker, the butterfly effect is at play. But as of now, I don't think that's becoming a problem yet, but it is something that I will keep my eye on. I also think that they did make a huge mistake with releasing Man of Medan first or at least without working on this game more. Many people turned away and never took a second glance at the rest of the games in Season 1 after the immensely disappointing ending and results from Man of Medan, and it is really sad to see because the remaining 3 games, they were immensely more entertaining and fulfilling than Man of Medan was. So I really hope that Season 2 might spark some more interest in those that looked away after the first release. Now, there is the question of the curator, who is prominent throughout the entire season, but he has some interesting development in The Devil in Me. Now, I purposely left him out of the discussion earlier because I feel like his story pertains to the entire season. The first question that arises is, why is he dressed similarly to the outfit worn by Dumet and H.H. Holmes? When playing The Devil in Me, it is hard to ignore the possibility that he might be Dumet, which could also explain why we never see Dumet's face despite Mark knocking the mask off of him at the end of the game. But it could also be chalked up to him just being a fan of the stories involving H.H. Holmes and Dumet, and maybe he's just simply copying their style. But in previous experiences with this company's games, everything tends to be thought through, and I highly doubt that it is just a coincidence. The next and most obvious question that we are left with at the end of the game is who or what is knocking on the doors of the repository. The strange sounds and aggressive thud seem to slightly startle the curator and has left many of us to speculate. Is the building going to crumble and collapse? Is someone coming after the curator? Whatever the speculation is, the reason as to why he might be in trouble seems to be the same, and that is the idea that perhaps he isn't supposed to be having us alter these stories. We hear some snippets throughout the games that the curator can't go into these stories and that he himself can't save these people. Perhaps we have saved too many people, perhaps we shouldn't have saved any at all. Either way, the idea that someone or something is coming after the curator has left many, myself included, very curious to see what events and developments might occur with the curator next season. So to sum up my thoughts on the first season of the Dark Pictures Anthology as a whole, I think that all of the games needed a little more time to be polished, but I did really enjoy playing through the first season, and I do look forward to seeing where Season 2 will take us. What might happen to the curator? Will the additions of the movement, climbing, inventories, and abilities all stick around in every single game moving forward? And if we might see a sequel in which Dumet is still the enemy in Season 2. There is a lot to look forward to with the next game already being teased as an alien sci-fi game, and I am really looking forward to the release of that, although it is still unclear if that will be released later this year or if it's pushed off till next year. I think you know by now which one I would hope for, so that they have a little more time to finish and polish the game. If anyone made it this far into the video, thanks for hearing me out, as this was a long video. If you made it to this point, leave a little alien face emoji in the comments section down below to let me know you made it this far. And if you guys like my discussion, please hit that like button down below and leave your thoughts in the comment section. While you're down there, click subscribe to see more videos from me and turn on notifications if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you future souls next time. Bye, guys.